feed us once and we just keep coming back for more. It's Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. It must be Mission Log Live. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Ken Ray. So much to talk about this week. Catching up on all the Star Trek news that came out of New York Comic Con. We thought that you, our Star Trek pals, might have a thought or two about it as well. Tonight, how about not one, but two short treks? We've got Q&A as well as The Trouble with Edward. We'll recap those. We'll do a little Q&A of our own. Excuse me. It's not here in the notes, but John, I do hope we're talking about the trailers as well for Discovery and for Picard.
Yeah, because it's actually in the notes. You just haven't gotten that far
really?
yet.
Yeah, that
totally.
far. I don't
totally there.
I don't read ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay, man. You're like Ron Burgundy.
I tell people that we don't look at each other's notes.
Yes,
I tell people that we don't look at each other's notes, and so then I didn't realize that you had it in there. I'm sorry. So anyway.
That's okay. Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. It's not just going to be us talking anyway. I want to hear from other people. Look, if nobody wants to talk about the Picard trailer, that's fine. If everybody wants to talk about it, that's fine. Here's the only thing. You have to let us know what you want to talk about. And there are, of course, a few ways to do that. You can join the Zoom meeting, which, you can use the one tap from your smartphone or follow the links on Facebook and the meeting codes there and all that fun stuff. Or pick up the phone the old-fashioned way, or pick it up some newfangled way. The point is you can call 669-900-6833 is the phone number to call, 669-900-6833. However you try to get in touch with us, if you succeed, you'll get to talk to Earl, and then Earl will put you right through to the planet.
All right. So as Ken mentioned, we are talking about those two short treks tonight. So keep in mind that this is a spoiler zone. If you haven't watched them yet, well, we're about to ruin all of the surprises. So you better get out while the getting's good. But if you don't mind being spoiled, or if you've watched them and you've got thoughts on those, please join us. Please talk to us about all of that. And yes, as Ken mentioned, and as I mentioned, we will also be talking about those trailers here. Of course, we got a sneak peek at season 3 of Disco, plus a second trailer of Picard. We know you've got thoughts. We know you've got speculations. You might even have questions, which we will pretend to answer. So hit us up, again, using that Zoom link or the one tap, or by calling 669-900-6833. Ken, as people do, we go on, and then they start talking. And that's what they're doing right now in the Zoom chat. So there's Casey, of course, asking where John Cooley is. I think this is really, we do this for them. I think we do this for Casey and for Cooley. So you're welcome, guys. There's Albert, there's Lisa, there's Chuck, there's Scott, two Scotts in one show. We got Carlos, we got David. He says, hey, interested to hear everyone's thoughts on The Trouble with Edward. So David, yes, we are interested in hearing everyone's thoughts on The Trouble with Edward and everything else. There's Barbara, there's Paul, there's Kim. There is, who else? There's Camel, and there's Steve Sheridan, and there's Karen. She says, let's talk about all the things. Well, we only have an hour. I don't know if we can talk about all the things in an hour, but if you want to narrow that down to like one or two things, give us a call, Karen. Love to talk to you. There's Alan. There's so many people saying hi. And let's see, Campbell says, will they explain the new data LAR? Or does it mean lore? I don't know. We got to wait. We got to wait and see what all they will explain. So welcome, everybody. So glad to have you here. Before we get into the meat of a show, kind of like the tasty center of a Tribble, why don't we talk about what is coming up for us? A couple of things to mention, both of them in virtual reality, both of them in Sansar. Ken, if you want to take the first one there.
Actually, you take the first one because I feel better prepared to talk about the second.
Then I will take the first one and you take the second one.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's what we get for not reading notes ahead.
Yeah.
So the first thing is actually starting right now. Well, you can start right now. If you're already signed up for Sansar, or if you're not, go sign up for free at sansar.com. Create your free account there. And what we're asking all of you creative people to do, create an alien avatar. Go nuts, go crazy. It could look like whatever you want it to look like because it's in VR. Then on Monday, October 28th at 7 o'clock Pacific, Rod, at the very least, and one or both of your Mission Log hosts will be in the Roddenberry Theater. We will be choosing a favorite, a most creative, a most awesome alien avatar out of what you created, that grand prize winner will get prizes both virtual and real. And then the greatest prize of all is that Rod Roddenberry will then wear that avatar for the next month in Sansar. So if you catch him, your creative work, your brilliant creative inspiration will take life on Rod. So
yeah, we tried to make it so that we could actually, like print it or have it made, and then he would just have to wear it for a month.
Yeah, that would be cool,
yeah,
right?
But he's flying, and stuff, and he's got to go through customs, and lose the extra arm, sir, they might say, and that's right. That would just go poorly.
Exactly. So like I said, you can start now. Go to sensar.com and sign up for there. Or if you already have an account and you've already been working on avatars and being creative, go nuts, go crazy. Then join us for Trek or Treat in Sansar on Monday, October 28th, 7 o'clock Pacific.
And then it looks like about a week later, maybe a little bit more than a week later, on November 7th, recent guest to Mission Log Live, Max Cervantes, is going to be walking around in the Roddenberry Nexus in Sansar, talking about some of the props and things that are in there. Now, I had the good pleasure of standing near Max the first time he went into Sansar. It was at Star Trek Las Vegas, not 2019, but 2018. The first time they were there, they had all the things set up. And most people were like, oh, this is fun. And they were there for like 5 minutes and then they would walk away. Some people have made it a little queasy. It's kind of funny, actually, because there are two ways to walk around. You can either, sort of like a point where you want to go and you'll immediately zap there. That's how I like to do it, because the walking around in VR kind of makes me it upsets my stomach a tiny bit. Max, on the other hand, because you remember, Max has been in tons of Star Trek and he's worked on tons of Star Trek behind the scenes. Max knows the stuff that's in Sansar, that's in the Nexus in Sansar. So what was interesting was I was standing near him and he was just walking around, looking at all this stuff, virtually picking it up, talking to nobody about it. except that I was there, and so I was listening. I would occasionally ask him questions, but I didn't know whether he could hear me or not because he had the helmet on. He knows about all this stuff that's in there, and he walked around there for about 30 minutes just going, oh yeah, I remember that, and oh yeah, I haven't seen one of those in a long time. So what's going to be fun is people can be there virtually with him, and so when he's talking, he'll actually be talking to you or whoever else is there about the stuff that's there. And what's great is you'll be able to ask him questions about it as well. So this is, it's a neat sort of experience. There are people who have seen every episode and can say, oh yes, that was in, scene 3, episode, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But you're going to get to walk around with a guy who's handled this stuff before and who, knows about, a lot of it, not everything that's there is something he's had his hands on, but very knowledgeable about the stuff in the Nexus. So it'll be like having a docent walking around with us or with you. So November 7th, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, circle your calendar, then circle the date in the calendar, because circling the whole calendar doesn't help.
Well, it might. If you need to remember all the days.
I guess, yeah. Where's my calendar? Oh, that's right. It's in the circle. I remember now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, last week we had a poll question. This week we have another one. I'll go ahead and hit last week's. Last week, space, would you go? Yes, 87%. Really? Okay. 87% say yes. And good for you. I hope that's true. I doubt you'll have a chance to prove it, but whatever. Maybe you will. And if you do, great. 13% said no, they would not go to space. So I want to be among the 87%. I have a feeling I'm actually among the 13%.
Yeah.
So, hats off to both of you. Some of you for wanting it to be true and others, for knowing, if I know me. We have a poll question this week as well, John.
We do, of course. So at New York Comic Con, they dropped the Picard trailer, part 2 of the Picard trailer, and then they released the teaser for season 3 of Discovery. So we asked you, what has you more excited, Picard or the Discoverse, the continuing Discoverse? Not surprised here, although maybe it's a little bigger skew than I thought. Picard, 88% of you are more excited about seeing the returning captain than the expanded Discoverse with Disco Season 3. I mean, look, to be honest, I'm excited about both. I always want to know what is coming around the corner for Star Trek, but there is a certain sentimentality and nostalgia attached to seeing the return of Picard and where that might go. It's been a while. It's been a minute since we've seen Picard on the screen.
It's been a couple days, and it honestly wasn't that great last time we did.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
Nemesis had its moments, but I mean, really, that's the last time we saw Picard. I got to say, when you and I were discussing this question, the reason that I opted for Picard or the Discoverse is because in that, I'm kind of counting Pike, Spock, number one, as well as 930 years in the future, wherever Michael Burnham and crew end up. There's sort of a more expensive thing going on here. Not that I'm trying to get anybody to change their answer. That larger split is kind of interesting, though. Anyway, that pulls up for like the next 6 days, I think, until about an hour before the next show, the next Mission Log Live, when we're like, oh yeah, what's our poll question?
Right, exactly. So now's the time, everybody. Here's the deal for this show. This is going to be very loose in terms of format and structure. Ken's going to recap Q&A. I will recap The Trouble with Edward. We both took some notes, but honestly, look, our notes are not nearly as interesting as what you have to say about these two episodes. I'm sure of it. I'm sure. Well, I'm guessing. I'm not really sure, but I want to know. I want you to call in and talk to us. So hit the link, pick up the phone, do the thing. We will be here standing by as soon as we finish those recaps. And these are short. They are called short treks after all. So we'll do the recaps, and then it is up to you to guide this conversation about those shorts, about the trailers, about whatever you want to talk about. Because, hey, let's face it, we have new Trek on right now and new Trek forthcoming. So, Ken, if you would do us the honors and fill us all in about Q&A. I feel like, it was a 15-minute short. You'll probably be at this like a good 10, 11 minutes.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Easily. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to do that because I'm doing the whole thing in Klingon, but my Klingon's not that good.
Cool. I'm just going to take a break then. I'll walk away for a few
you
minutes.
Do that.
Okay.
Go grab a snack.
Cool. All right. I'll see you later.
Here we go. Shouty Ensign Spock arrives on the Enterprise, greeted by the ship's XO, number one. For his very first day serving on the 1701, she gives him grief for not asking questions. He's been on the ship for 37 seconds. Shouldn't the science officer ask questions? He asks a couple, then she asks if he wants to see the bridge. In the turbo lift, well, there is lots of time in the turbo lift since it breaks down on the way there from here, and with them in it. And now Spock's asking questions, and number one is asking questions. Through the conversation, we learn how alone Spock feels, how outside. Number one shares that she does too, apparently because she likes operatic musicals from the late 1800s on Earth. It's cool, though. Spock does too. They each have secrets. They each share secrets. Then the turbo lift is running again, and Spock takes his place on the bridge. Got thoughts of your own? Hit the link, as John said, or call 669-900-6833, 669-900-6833. And now, on to The Trouble with Edward.
Wait, I'm sorry, that was it? You're done? Okay.
Dude, that's it. I mean,
that's the whole thing.
They talked about talking. They talked some more. They sang. They got going.
Okay.
I mean, that's really what happened. There's more action, I believe, in The Trouble with Edward.
Okay, here we go. The Trouble with Edward. Captain Pike says goodbye to his science officer, Lynn Lucero, who is taking command of the research vessel Cabot. He says she'll be great, but it won't exactly be like the Enterprise. Day one. A meeting of each scientific department to discuss their mission of helping prevent the starvation of a species who happen to be living near Klingon space. There's one very awkward member of the team, Edward Larkin, who says he's been working with his new found creature, the fuzzy, cute Tribble. And it is cute, everyone agrees. And it's good eating once you get past the fur, says Larkin. He could even increase their reproductive rate if needed. Everyone else takes a pass on this plan, especially Captain Lucero, who actually reassigns Larkin to climatology. None of this sits well with Larkin, who does at least two very rash, poorly thought out things. genetically modifies the Tribbles anyway, and sends complaints about his new captain to Starfleet. The next day, Lucero gives Larkin the news that he's being transferred. That's bad enough, but the next thing she knows, Lucero has a ship full of Tribbles doing what they do, which is to say reproducing at an alarming rate. Seriously, they are taking over everything, everywhere, and pretty soon they'll have starved everyone out of oxygen. The crew fight back as best they can when there's nothing left to do but just get out. So they do, on a shuttle, all except for Larkin, who is still angry with his captain and is literally swallowed up by the crush of his creation. Sometime later, Lucero sits before a panel of Starfleet brass who point out all the shortcomings of her short tenure on the Cabot, to which she can only chalk it up to the idiot on her crew. And then a commercial for Tribbles breakfast cereal. The end. The end. That was, yeah.
Well, here's the thing, though. I don't know if you know this, John. That's actually not the end. That's a prequel to some of the trouble with Tribbles that we'll have down the road.
Oh,
yeah.
See? Okay, yeah. I get that. I get that now.
Really quickly, 669-900-6833 is the phone number to call. 669-900-6833, or you can use the one tap from your smartphone, or click the links in Facebook. You get to talk to Earl, then you have to talk to us. So, do you want to? What do you want to do here?
Well, so here's the thing. You mentioned something to me right before the show started.
Yeah,
which was about negative reaction to these two shorts.
Negative? Well, no, not to these two shorts. To the Trouble with Edward.
Really?
The Trouble with Edward, yes. Friends of ours, mutual friends of ours, one of whom actually is sometimes in the chat room. I don't know if she is tonight or not. But mutual friends of ours just hated this episode, like hated it. Like to the point that I didn't even bother asking why they hated it. Because the hate was just like, because I saw this on Twitter, and the hate was so it was hot. It hurt my hand to touch my phone. That's how hot the hatred was. Another friend of ours said maybe it was time for her to give up her Trek card because boy did she hate this episode. Now I've hated a lot of episodes of Star Trek, as you know.
Sure, I've
loved a lot of episodes of Star Trek, as you know. I don't think there has been an episode of Star Trek that was like, well, I'm done. I'm done now with, I guess if this is what Star Trek is, that I'm not part of that anymore. I mean, there are things that I don't like. And I'm like, okay, well, that's fine over there. Now I feel certain that the person who said, maybe it's time for me to give up my Trek card wasn't being serious. But the level of negativity that has arisen out of the Trouble with Edward was honestly quite surprising to me.
Well, see, overall, I think both of these shorts are great. I really enjoyed both of them. But that said, I can see where there are maybe questionable choices that were made. I can see where these aren't everybody's cup of tea. But kind of the beauty of doing these short tracks is that they are really short. They are really focused. You get to tell a story, get in, get out, and it really doesn't affect much of anything else. Now, granted, the Tribble story is a prequel, and for that matter, so is Q&A, because that is Spock's first appearance on the Enterprise, and it's everything pre the story that we got in the Cage. But to me, all these do is they just lend a little texture to maybe a specific story, or just to the Star Trek story in general. And I feel like Q&A did that with the Spock and Number One characters. Because look, Number One, all we got was the few minutes of Majel Barrett playing her on screen in the Cage, and then the few minutes that we've gotten so far of Rebecca Romaine playing her in season 2 of Disco. I thought we would have seen a lot more of her there. So I'm really glad to see her back in this, and I hope it means that there will be more of her, because look, she's just so cool. I think this is a great character to explore. I hope that we get a lot more of her, and of Pike, and of Spock, and of whomever else is kicking around on the Enterprise. Maybe like a young Captain Boyce is just waiting to be seen.
Dr. Boyce. He wasn't captain, was he?
Did I say Captain? No, I meant
Yeah.
Dr. Boyce. Dr.
There
Boyce.
is no young Dr. Boyce. There's never been a young Dr. Boyce.
No, he's.
I don't want to see young Dr. Boyce. Exactly. I want man. He's like 5 years older than Bones. I think.
Yeah. No. He's
I don't mean DeForest Kelly's character. I mean Bones. That man is old. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to see Boyce. I would love to see Boyce and Pike, because that was the relationship, and the relationship that we're being given now is Pike and Spock. But I mean, it was what was it? A man will tell his bartender stuff he'll never tell his doctor. Yeah. I mean, there was a closeness between those two characters that I would love to see. I'd love to see Boyce explored a bit, or acknowledged.
Right.
I'd love to see him exist. Yeah.
But here's the thing. So I love the idea that we loosen up Una a bit here. But there was something that, I mean, look, in 1964, when they're putting together the cage, and the description for number one is just sort of, she is computer-like, and that's all you get, because that character did not continue on with Star Trek unless you count the menagerie, but it's the same footage from the cage. So you really have very little description on the character. We got nice little moments with her in season 2 of Disco. Just her coming in and sitting down and eating a cheeseburger, I thought was a great, it was just a great bit of business to give you that much more information about her than what we had before. And seeing her sing, by the way, I don't know if you watched the little, the behind the scenes of the short trek where Rebecca Romaine talks about why she did that.
No.
It was a nice little 1.5-minute video. And she says that Alex Kurtzman had asked, tell us about you. Tell us about things that you do that are skills or just, obsessions, fandoms that you have that we might write into the character. And she was like, well, I don't know. I speak other languages. I do these other things. And I happen to love Gilbert and Sullivan. And we'll sing Gilbert and Sullivan just sort of if asked. So they're like, okay, we're writing in Gilbert and Sullivan from the Pirates of Penzance is where that song is from. So,
okay.
So that's what they did.
Here's the problem, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
By the way, 669-900-6833 is the phone number to call, 669-900-6833, or use the one tap from your smartphone. Or if you're on Facebook, click the links there. The meeting code is running across the top right now. So if you're seeing this right this second, you are so close to actually being part of this conversation. All you need to do is be part of the conversation. Otherwise, we're just going to mission log this thing. And maybe that's what people want. I don't know. It was great to see Rebecca Romaine again. It was great to see Ethan Peck again. It was great to see Ensign Mount again. It was great to see the Enterprise again. It was even kind of interesting to hear Spock talk about, how disconnected he feels, although it feels like that's maybe not a conversation you're going to have even in the first 2 hours of being stuck in an elevator with someone. When she then says, I know how difficult this can be, and it turns out her deep secret is that she likes show tunes, that's kind of a drag, especially because then what she says on an episode of Star Trek is keep your fandom to yourself.
Yeah.
Keep that thing that you think makes you kind of weird, keep that locked down if you want to be anybody. Yeah. And that's troubling. I'd rather, instead of it being like, oh, what's a neat thing you do? Okay, well, we'll write that into this. You're defining a character that people have hungered for. People have hungered to know more about number one since fandom became fandom, right? Mm-hmm. And so when she says, I know how difficult this can be, do you want to see? For that moment, if you're going to rewrite Star Trek canon anyway, or if you're going to change Star Trek canon anyway, she could have been part something else. She could have been, she's got a bunch of cybernetic stuff, if she's more computer than person or whatever. There could be cybernetics working in there. There could be all kinds of things that would be like a real secret. That the defining thing, the thing that's supposed to make her understand Spock being raised practically as a bastard by his own father, because his own father is so ashamed of how much stuff there is about Spock that he doesn't like. And then Spock's ashamed of that stuff himself. For her to go, no, I get that because I like Gilbert and Sullivan. Dude, I mean, here's the thing. Everything else about that episode was fantastic. The rest of it was wonderful. That moment, I was just like, that you're on Star Trek talking to Star Trek fans, right?
So here's the thing. I don't disagree with you that if we take that as the message of the episode, because I actually wrote that down as one of my notes, one of my comments. It's like, okay, if we're saying this, then when exactly do you let your freak out? When exactly do you get to do this? And that is an argument you can have about, just simply office etiquette. She's trying to make the point that, look, we all have personal lives. We all have aspects of ourselves that we keep out of the workplace. Does she go to an extreme that I think is a little weird? Yeah. Because as you point out, you're saying this on a Star Trek show.
To people who are paying to watch Star Trek.
Right. Don't let your freak out. But here's the thing. Are we dealing with two characters who are kind of cut from the same cloth, who maybe are just awkward like this? Because I don't think we have that situation with some other characters. So maybe she is just taking this to an extreme, and maybe that is a bad influence for Spock to hear, but they bond on this. They have, I think, a lovely bond on this, and she can carry that embarrassment with her as long as she wants. She can have this maybe misguided view of her own fandoms as much as she wants. But I think just overall, as far as telling a character story, it's lovely and it works. And I don't besmirch her for having a love of Gilbert and Sullivan. And I also maybe feel a little bit of sympathy for her thinking, this is how I deal with it. I don't let anybody in. I don't let anybody see this side of me. And this is my advice to you. Maybe it's terrible advice. Maybe that's what drives Spock a little crazy when in the naked time we seeing him banging his head against the desk because he can't deal with not keeping that emotional side in anymore. We blame her, is what we're saying.
So it just struck me, I mean, it's whatever. I mean, it strikes me as, I love They Might Be Giants and I don't care. And if everybody hated They Might Be Giants and I loved They Might Be Giants, I don't think I would liken that to whatever tragedy you have in your past. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, she doesn't know what his thing is, but she's like, well, I know how tough it is because I like this song, which it turns out Spock likes too, by the way. That was kind of surprising, actually, for him to burst into song at the end as well.
Sure.
So there, we've given you stuff to think about, and now we've given you, stuff to fight about. 669-900-6833 is the phone number to call. 669-900-6833, or use the one tap from your smartphone. Maybe the poll question, John, should have been, have you actually watched the short tracks?
Well, hang on.
If the answer was no, we could have actually changed it.
We move on to something else. Yeah. I want to address something here, though. So in the chat room, because you guys are, chatting it up right here on Facebook. What you need to do is actually pick up the phone.
You're going to say what they're saying. You're rewarding the behavior.
Yeah, that's very true. But there's one I want to take head on here, and that's Ron, who's saying it just proves that it's hard to tell a detailed, rich Star Trek story in a short time. 100% disagree. You are missing the point. I think that is exactly what the short treks have done from the beginning, the ones that we saw between seasons 1 and 2 of Disco and what we're seeing right now. What Ken and I are talking about is maybe a mismatch on the moral meaning message that we're getting out of Q&A. But what we're actually getting here are deeply detailed Star Trek stories being told in under 15 minutes.
Yeah, this is only, 6 minutes, 5 minutes shorter than one of the animated series episodes.
Yeah.
And you can knock the animated series for a lot of things. The music, chief among them, not that the music's bad, it's just there are only about 3 minutes of it, but they use it for 2 seasons. You can also knock the animation if you want to. It's kind of bad, but there were real stories being told there. And a lot of times when we were going over the animated series, it felt like they had actually, you got 22 minutes. You got to tell your story and you got to tell it fast, I'm having trouble remembering off the top of my head right now, but I know that there were short treks from last time around that kind of had that same feeling to me. It's like, you've got this much time to tell this much story. And the thing is, if you know that, I mean, if that's your plan, if that's your objective, a lot of writers can do it. I'm not saying I could do it because I doubt I could. And certainly there are some writers who can't, but I mean, Star Trek, I mean, people have been able to nail that in that short period of time before.
Well, yeah, and it forces a kind of efficiency on the part of the writers, the director, etc. I think it boils it down to where you go, oh, okay, this is now the essence of this story that we're trying to tell. And in Q&A, it's a really narrow focus. The meeting of the two characters, they Ethan Peck and Rebecca Romaine describe it in the behind the scenes stuff as like doing a one-act play.
Yeah.
Had I not seen them say that, I would have described it as exactly the same way. It's like, cool, we're just going to have a conversation with these characters and see what they get out of each other. And actually, I was about to reference a comment that was being made in the chat room, but that person has actually called in.
Oh,
so we're just
okay. Hold on really quickly, because I'm glad that person has called in.
Okay.
Because it's always fun to hear them. But really quickly, 669-900-6833 is the phone number to call. You could be next. 669-900-6833, or use the one tap from your smartphone, or hit the links in Facebook. We're starting on Q&A, by the way, because that's where it started. If you want to, if you want to go to one of the trailers, if you want to go to The Trouble with Edward, bring it, as our first caller has. John, you do the honors.
John Cooley.
There
you are.
Hey, John. How you doing?
What's up, man? How are you?
Nada. I think, I mean, I've been listening and also following along with what's going on over in the chat. And I think there's a lot of, like, almost kind of a misconception, or maybe some people aren't getting all the points that maybe Michael was trying to make with Q&A. I don't necessarily think that he was trying to say, hey, stifle who you are. I think it was more on the nose than that. I think it was, you need to look at it a little more literally, perhaps even a little more militarily. You've got basically a senior officer. She's the first officer of the ship, talking to this new kid that's just arrived straight out of the academy. He's an ensign, and maybe she sees a little spark of something odd that, we know from the larger story and the larger franchise that humans and Vulcans had odd interactions depending on the way you're looking at it. Maybe she's just saying, hey, it might be a little uncomfortable for your shipmates to see a Vulcan that's a little outside of what they expect. Maybe lock that down a little bit. From a military perspective, and I served, and I know a bunch of other fans out there have too. From a military perspective, that's actually really smart. Especially if you're coming into it new and into a situation where you've got a command structure that's pretty established. You kind of maybe want to pause and learn from the people around you, and maybe, keep a little of what makes you a freak locked down. Now, knowing the sort of cat that Michael Chabon is, writing Cavalier and Clay and other stuff, I just don't see where somebody like that, where his message would ever be, don't be yourself.
And
I think
yet
probably
that was the message presented.
Yeah. Again, everyone's mileage might vary, but I took a little bit something different out of that. Again, he had 15 minutes to work with, and I think his main overreaching mission was to communicate how number one's character traits got transferred to Spock, which we know behind the scenes how that happened. But he was trying to create, almost like fan fiction, he was trying to create a bridge between the production reality of things and the fiction. And I kind of dig that. I love the idea of filling in the gray areas of the map a little bit.
Yeah, well, we definitely get the cage Spock here. He's smiling, he's shouty. We get that guy rather than Where No Man Has Gone Before Spock. Although we get a little smug Spock in Where No Man Has Gone Before. But yeah, he's a different guy. And you're right. You're sort of putting on screen that transition between the cage and Where No Man in the version of Spock that we get. But look, I don't disagree with you either, John, which is to say that here are people who are finding for lack of a better word, a human bond, or at least a personal bond But this is also a workplace, and you're the new guy. And by the way, everybody here has heard Mission Log before, and they know never to trust a smiling Vulcan. So it's your first day at school. Just chill and be cool, and don't let anybody in. However, we know that number one is going to be gone at some point, and Spock is going to do this long, slow sort of unwind until he can reconcile those parts of his personality. And he is a bit of a special case. He's the only half human, half Vulcan that we know of. So, maybe his deal is a little bit different. Maybe Una has already read the bio on Spock, and she knows what she's getting into. I don't know. Look, I mean, I'm not necessarily justifying what she says and justifying or trying to say that her answer is the only correct answer here. But from her point of view, can we say that she's doing what she thinks is right?
Makes sense. I mean, that's what I love about this. It's any way you look at it, it's thought provoking. We can debate this now forever, as we have all the other episodes for 50 years. And this adds a new little corner to the franchise. That's why I love The Trouble with Edward too. I'm kind of like, look at that. They even explain why Lorca's Tribble can sit next to his bowl of fortune cookies without spitting Tribbles out all over the ship. I dig it.
Right.
It was this fun little nugget, a little triblet of history, and I so appreciated everything about it. I think I've watched it a half dozen times or more by now, which is also just due to the fact that I'm a huge H. John Benjamin fan. And I love the idea that there are these little ships in Starfleet, and maybe not every officer is going to be the model Starfleet officer that we see in Starfleet, because it's impossible for every officer in Starfleet to be the model. There's going to be the weird officers that maybe have a certain moral flexibility, perhaps. I just loved the idea that not only the first time we ever saw Tribbles, it was in the hands of somebody morally flexible, like Cyrano Jones. Mm-hmm. I love the idea that what made the Tribbles problematic to begin with was somebody kind of like that. It's a nice little full circle that I dig. A fuzzy full circle, but a full circle nonetheless.
Hey, John, since you're a very knowledgeable guy about the overall Trek story, and I'm going to say the word. I'm going to say the word. The Trek canon. Not
canon.
Yeah, it pained me to say that. I know. When you watched The Trouble with Edward, did you have any trouble reconciling that with what we know about Tribbles? Because here's the thing, I don't read Star Trek novels. I rarely ever read Star Trek comic books. The ones that I have read are from a while back. And I know that there were some people who thought, well, The Trouble with Edward violates canon. And my understanding is, no, it doesn't violate canon. There were other things that fans had speculated about regarding the Tribbles, but we really didn't have anything prior to fill in that story, other than just what we get with Cyrano Jones showing up. So my understanding is now you have a show that actually creates this backstory, that we're not undoing anything. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Right. No, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. So basically, as I understand it, and Dayton will call in and correct me or beat me around the head tomorrow if I get it wrong. Canon essentially is, that which has been established in an on-screen Star Trek. Now, if it's a novel, comic book, fanzine, that sort of thing, that's flexible. Things can remain flexible until they're established in or on screen, in which case now you've got something that's a touch point or touchstone that is sort of like a fixed point, like, okay, well, this is what we know now. And one of the things that I love that the new writers' room is doing is conferring with writers of all of the other media, like comic books and writers and things like that. And they're trying to create sort of a canon that can handle expanded materials also, like comics and books and everything. But that's really just making sure that there's a loose continuity that everybody sort of respects. If something happens on screen, it supersedes it. And it's almost like getting a correction to a computer program. Like, that's a patch and that's the way it is. Mm-hmm. And I dig it. Like, again, the trouble with Edward, I've heard from some of my friends that have said, they had problems with it or it didn't fit with canon. And I think they did a really good job kind of making it fit within the framework of canon. Who knows? Maybe the next, look, I'll be burned as a heretic for this, but maybe the next digital revision of TOS we get, 25, 30, 40 years from now, we'll have little digital tribbles being spit out from the fur of larger tribbles aboard the Enterprise. Who knows?
Right.
I wouldn't necessarily hate that because they did such a good job of giving us a little backstory for the origin of the prolific Tribble. I dig it. There was one thing missing. I wouldn't have minded even just an oblique nod. Maybe there's something that I haven't seen yet on a computer screen somewhere to David Gerald, the creator of, the Tribbles and the Trouble with Tribbles.
I was surprised to not see his name on there. Yeah. And that's not to say that there isn't something on set that we just haven't seen. I mean, this production's been really good about little nods and things like that to prior Star Trek productions on the set, or maybe somebody's name will flash across the computer screen, something like that. So I haven't been able to examine it that closely yet. So there may be something. But I think, just the old school Trekkie in me might have appreciated a little nod like that. But otherwise, I thought it was so much fun that, I was happy as a clam with it.
Could have actually had them serving on the Gerald.
Sure.
Yeah.
Something like that might have been sort of an interesting nod. Yeah.
Hey,
I just thought it was interesting. Yeah.
Awesome. John, thank you so much for calling in. Really appreciate it. Knew you'd have some interesting comments there. So we'll see you next time. Okay.
Awesome. Take care, guys.
All right. Cheers, man.
Bye-bye.
669-900-6833 is the phone number to call. 669-900-6833, or you can use the one tap from your smartphone, or if you're on Facebook, click the link there. And then the meeting code is scrolling at the top of the screen right now. And then you can talk to Earl, and then you can talk to us. I got to say, of the two, and this is weird, because I know so many people had such a negative reaction. I thought the Trouble with Edward nailed it.
Well, what did they nail though?
Comedy. I mean, it was hilarious.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there were things that I didn't like about it. I think honestly, I don't feel like the captain was a good captain.
Agreed.
And it's not, and because she called him out in front of everybody, and because she tried to just pass him on to somebody else. You're being transferred. Although that was exactly what Riker wanted to do to Barclay, if you remember, sort of the misfit of TNG. Mostly though, it was the comedy. Like, so often comedy is like, oh, look, they're trying to be funny. I laughed out loud so many times during that. The one thing that I didn't like, probably the thing I didn't like most, as far as just like putting together the show, I kind of wish they had released that commercial on YouTube. Or maybe sort of like a weird thing that was out there that might have gotten people interested, because having it at the end of this, it sort of felt like, okay, is that supposed to be a commercial that's happening in the 23rd century? Because I don't think we would have commercials. Plus they got rid of the whole, whatever. Yeah. That would have been like a neat thing to just throw out there someplace else. But of course that's after the credits. So I don't even know if I care, honestly.
No, I totally agree. Yeah.
H. John Benjamin. I mean, I'm with Cooley on that one. I love him. I love seeing him do stuff. And even though I didn't agree with a lot of what the captain was saying to him, the comedy back and forth, like down to this conversation is over thing. I mean, it was funny. It was well paced. It was well written. And then it also had a bunch of messages, which you get in Tribble episodes, and you never expect them in Tribble episodes because it seems like it's going to be dumb.
Yep.
And then they wow you.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot going on as far as, again, I go back to this whole thing about, can you tell a Star Trek story in 15 minutes? Yeah. Because it comes down to the script. and it comes down to what you're trying to say. And here we are in 15 minutes where, we get to talk about science, and we're talking about character, and we're talking about leadership, and we're talking about all these things that just happen in such a fast time that really every time I went back and rewatched this, I found new and deeper layers each and every time. And some great details, by the way, too, just as far as the production design geek in me, seeing the Burke chairs kind of in the background of the conference room. That was really cool. And what was that big, the Tribble vacuum the guy had on his back? Somebody pointed out it was kind of like a Dr. Seuss thing. You're just walking around and it just sucks up a Tribble, and they're hilarious, great stuff that they're not. Look, Star Trek has had a problem doing comedy in the past.
Yeah,
not
the trouble
always.
with Tribbles. The trouble with Tribbles. That endless bar fight, I'm pretty sure was supposed to be funny. And certainly we've had a lot of fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. So, yeah.
Yes.
Hey, we have another caller on the line. Before we get to him, I'll remind everybody how they can be the caller after that caller. 669-900-6833 is the phone number to call, 669-900-6833, or use the one tap from your smartphone. Or if you're on Facebook, click the link. The meeting thing or the meeting code is right up at the top. Then you can be on with us in no time.
All right, there he is, Craig.
Yes. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Craig.
I didn't see Q&A, but I just did watch right now. Trouble with Edward. It was a odd comedy. There were funny parts to it. Just showing. But what I look for is it's showing a variety of storytelling approaches that Star Trek is capable of, and that's what I'm liking about these short treks. The creativity behind it. I still have to digest this episode. Yeah, the thing with the Tribbles vacuum, that was hilarious. And yeah, the captain, I agree, did take me out of it. I would actually take out of the episode the way she was approaching. Maybe I wasn't used to that type of captain.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. She's brand new. But at the same time, you look at that and you go, okay, well, Edward had to work his way up somehow to get to where he is, and she had to work her way up somehow to get to where she is, but he is ill-suited for the position that he's in. I don't think she's not cut out to be a captain, but she was handed this very difficult situation right off the bat. And what you think is going to be a simple, like, look, we're just on a scientific exploratory vessel. What can go wrong? And then she's got this very difficult case to deal with and doesn't handle it exactly the right way. Yeah. I think she needs to go back to sort of leadership training, you know.
I think I want to get outside the box. I think your last caller talked about it's almost like stereotyping a captain, being what they're supposed to be. Well, this is a different approach coming in, and so I want to leave my mind open to different types of people in different roles I'm not totally used to. But I still have to watch it a few times.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the one thing, we brought it up a minute ago. A lot of people would look at Riker and say, there's a leader, there's your guy, right? But then when we watched the first Barclay episode, Riker's first thought was, I want this guy off my ship. And Picard says, no, what I want you to do is work with this guy and maybe make it a bit better. Look, to concentrate on this in this short trek, it's not the point, right? Yeah. And so it's kind of hard to say, oh, well, this is terrible and this is wrong, because going back as well to Q&A, I personally didn't like the message that number one gave to Spock, but it really was, as John said earlier, more of a character study. And it was neat to see those characters, it was neat to see those actors, it was neat to see that set. The whole thing is not ruined by that message, although I wish the message was different.
Sure.
The whole thing is not ruined by, her not necessarily being the best manager in the world. If you buy the comedy, and if you're cool with the comedy, it's hilarious. I think it was like the third time that I was watching it where I wasn't laughing enough, where I was like, I don't really feel good about what she's saying there. But, 15 minutes, one time, watched it two times. I thought it was just hilarious.
And big props to those actors, because it's not just that it's funny situations. Their delivery is awesome. Yeah. They are both great. The timing on that, so you got to hand it to them, and you have to hand it to the director. Their timing is spot on. The overlapping dialogue, which, as we know, for the first nearly 50 years of Trek was a no-no. They master it here. They absolutely do. Hey, Craig, we've got another call to get to before we wrap it up tonight. Anything else you want to share with us before we talk to Karen, who is standing by?
Hey, some great points there. But finding my strengths of my crew where I'll challenge them. People surprise me, and they'll come in and step into a position where I didn't really expect it, and then whoa, they have stood out. So I look forward to that. Anyway, have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. You too, Craig.
Thanks, Craig. Hey, really quickly before we get to Karen, two things. First of all, 669-900-6833 is the phone number to call, 669-900-6833. Phone seems to be the way to go this week, John. I would say if there was a poll, the phone is winning 100%. Karen's going to be on. Karen's going to be on in just a moment. Before we get to Karen, though, I do want to remind you of some other really great Star Trek-related podcasts that you can listen to. You can find them all at podcast.roddenberry.com. That is the online home of the Roddenberry Podcast Network, where you will find not just Mission Log and Mission Log Live, but also Women at Warp, Priority One, The Trek Files, Daily Star Trek News, and Shabam.
Shabam.
There you go. Podcast.roddenberry.com. Check them all out. Honestly, we're almost to a place now where there's a new show every day.
Yeah.
Not
It's a
quite.
good feeling, man.
Yeah, but we're almost to a place now where there is something new every day. Lots of different types of shows, lots of different points of view being hit there. And it'd be great if you would check any or all of them out. Podcast.roddenberry.com.
Yes. So, Karen, who has been waiting patiently, how are you doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
Excellent. Thanks for calling in. And what is on your mind?
Oh, I just had to contribute.
Please.
But it's funny because I haven't seen a whole lot of negative response to the Trouble with Edward, actually, on my timelines and stuff. So I was a little surprised to hear that there was a lot of negative. I mean, I've heard some, and some people say I didn't care for it, but most people seem to really like it. But yeah.
Oh, and I was going to say that's good to hear. I mean, it's possible that the people that I heard, they are people that I have known in Trek fandom for a number of years now, and so I was surprised to hear the negativity. Although when we were talking about it with Earl before the show, he said that he had actually picked up on a lot of that as well, and not from the same people. So I'm glad to hear that you're not seeing it the same way. See, I think John is the smartest of all of us because he's just not paying attention to social media.
No.
which is brilliant. And I was good at that for a little while. And then like The Godfather 3, it kept pulling me back in. So
yeah, no, that really is part of it, especially when it's the new stuff. I really try to stay away from commentary about what's brand new. Every now and then something slips through, but I won't listen to other podcasts. I won't read reviews or commentary or criticism, positive or negative, because I just want to come at this fresh. I just want to go with my own gut feeling. Great song by Devo, by the way.
Gut feeling. Yeah. One of my favorites.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Karen. I'm sorry.
I mean, I don't know if it's like I follow a lot of people both on Twitter and Facebook, and in general, I felt like it was well received. But of course, there was going to be all the canon, and I kind of felt like people took it too seriously in a way. But because I always had trouble with the fact that the Tribbles were breeding all over the Enterprise, but what were they really eating there? There weren't bins and bins of grain on the Enterprise, and they were still breeding, So, I mean, there are inconsistencies within the very first episode itself, but I really enjoyed the humor, but, it had that kind of office Mindy Kaling. I found it, some people say, oh, it's like the Orville, but I find the Orville more sophomore humor, and this was a lot more dry undertone humor. Him hanging out at the synthesizer, trying to get persuade people that she's bad.
I love that moment. I love that moment so much. And by the way, how do you feel about a food synthesizer that yells out your order when you pick it up? Like that's really strange. It's like it's just you in front of the food slot, and you already know what you typed in, and it's a computer. It's not going to get it wrong. But then it yells at you like, "A big salad over here."
Yeah.
You know, it's really
like the
odd.
old counters, slinging hash.
Right.
And he's just like leaning up there. And then the fact that he like kept throwing Noel under the bus, and he fed Noel the Tribble, and Noel's like, no, it wasn't good. And, or Noel's DNA would be any better. Yeah.
And Noel's the foodie. Noel's a foodie. I wanted to know more. I wanted to know more about Noel. Yeah.
All those little subtle things, like when he's picking up the Tribbles and then he can't help but go, "Ooh, this one's really meaty." I mean, it's just that funny stuff. I said it's kind of like Dr. Seuss meets The Office meets The Trouble with Harry. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that Hitchcock film, but that kind of leapt to mind, that quirky, odd things happening in the background that you're not paying attention to that you'll see later if you watch it again. There's just stuff going on that's just like a little quirky, and it reminded me of that movie. And I really did, but I was thinking, and this is really kind of, I thought, oh, I'm so silly, but I was like, everybody wants this big story out of it, but frankly, there was a point in that there's somebody who just focused on their own selfish, he was just obsessed with his work with the Tribble. He wasn't going to let anybody drag that down. He wasn't going to let the captain tell him what to do. He was convinced that he was right without thinking about any of the consequences or anything else. And he goes ahead and does it and causes the demise of a ship, locates a whole civilization, is on the brink of moving into Klingon space and and she says he was an idiot. At the end, that's what went wrong. And it's like, well, that's a bit of a commentary. You're so self-centered and you won't listen to anything else. It doesn't matter how brilliant you are or not. You can cause the downfall of everything.
Yeah. Well, that nails it. That nails it. And that's the brilliance of the episode, is being able to tell a really funny story with really funny characters, but also do what Star Trek does and slip in a heavy idea or two when you're not paying attention. It was a really great way to do that. And for all the times that Star Trek has not been successful doing that, trying to blend comedy with a message, or maybe not, just do straight up comedy, it doesn't always land. And this one lands. I'm a little bummed that Larkin is dead now, because he's so funny that I kind of wanted to see what would happen to him in a post Starfleet career. Because, again, in this idealized 23rd or 24th century, everybody's got so much opportunity, so much going for them, but there's still one guy who has to be the worst at whatever job there is, and it just happens that we followed his story this week.
Well, and it wasn't that he was the worst scientist as far as brains went. He was just the worst at looking at any kind of consequences. He was focused on the here and now, his thing, and that was it, and not any kind of anything after that. And he would continue to be that way no matter what position he was put in, I'm sure.
Yep.
But I was kind of wondering, do you think this is a similar humor to what we're going to see in the lower decks?
Ooh. That's a great question.
That'd be neat. I would love to see something this funny on a weekly basis. That'd be fantastic. I haven't watched enough Rick and Morty to know how the rest of his humor is, but that'd be fun to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I apologize, Karen, but we're like right up against the end of the show. But
thanks, you guys.
No, thank you so much for calling in, and give us a call back again soon. Okay.
All right.
All right. Take care, hon.
So I think the moral of the story, John, bad week for outsiders on Star Trek.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Like, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah. If you're a geek, keep it to yourself. And if you're an outsider, wow, really keep that to yourself. Cause you'll end up outside. Actually, he was inside. Everybody else, I guess, was outside.
He was.
We didn't even get to the trailers.
And by the way, Homer says Larkin is probably dead, but not for sure. I think he's dead. I mean, they mention that there was one casualty in the whole thing. Now, we did see that one female officer like screaming. I don't think the Tribbles were eating her. I just think that, they're suffocating her. But presumably that guy with the vacuum got in there and got them out of the way for her. So presumably it was Larkin who died in a ship full of Tribbles. I don't know.
I want to say it was you on Mission Log just a couple of weeks ago who said, it's Star Trek. You never know.
Mirror Universe Larkin. That's
probably be about the same, right? Just a tiny bit more angry, I would think. Well, and only a goatee, not the full beard.
That's how you tell them.
That's a given. Mm-hmm. Hey, Mission Log Live is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Executive producer Rod Roddenberry. Technical production on Mission Log Live by Earl Green. As I said before, be sure to visit podcast.roddenberry.com for the latest from the Roddenberry Podcast Network. If you'd like to support Mission Log directly, that would be neat. Give us a look at patreon.com/missionlog. Thanks to everybody who joined us live or later, and we will talk to you next week.